Friday, 5 p.m. Jerusalem time. From NBC Studios. This is NBC Journal with Bassam Zahir and Sana Abu Samra.
Prime Minister Amir Hamdallah off to Davos for World Economic Forum.
UNRWA reports not receiving notice from Israel on planned closure of its schools in Jerusalem.
Over 3 million tourists visited Palestine in 2018, says official.
Hello and welcome again. Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah left Beirut on Monday after attending an Arab Economic Summit on his way to Davos, Switzerland, to attend a 4-day World Economic Forum conference scheduled to start on Tuesday. The premier, traveling with the Foreign Minister Riyad Malki and Minister of Economy Abir Aoudi, will be representing President Mahmoud Abbas at the annual World event. Hamdallah is going to be the keynote speaker at a discussion panel on economic development in the Middle East. Furthermore, his visit aims to meet world leaders to discuss the economic situation in Palestine.
PLO Executive Committee member Hanan Ashrawi said the Israeli government's provocative decision targeting Palestinian refugees in Jerusalem, including closing down and appropriating UNRWA institutions, is an affront to international law and international humanitarian law, as well as the will of the international community as expressed in the United Nations resolutions. Israel is targeting a United Nations agency mandated by the United Nations General Assembly to operate in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, as well as Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, said the statement. UNRWA's legitimate and welcome presence in Jerusalem predates and supersedes the illegal Israeli military occupation of the city, stated Ashrawi. We call on all governments to assume their responsibilities in confronting this destructive American-Israeli campaign. United Nations member states must defend UNRWA and Palestinian refugees, as well as the legal status of Jerusalem, and take steps to defend the foundations of the international order, added Ashrawi.
3 Israeli police raided on Monday Maqasid Hospital, Events Hall on Mount of Olives in occupied East Jerusalem, and prevented the administration from holding an event marking 50 years for its establishment, according to witnesses. Maqasid, the biggest Palestinian hospital in Jerusalem, had invited Palestinian Minister of Health Jawad Awad, Minister of Jerusalem Affairs in the Palestinian Authority Adnan Husseini, and Jerusalem Governor Adnan Ghaith, along with other Palestinian officials and guests, to attend the event that also included the inauguration of new hospital wards. Israeli police raided the events hall located across from the hospital before the start of the celebrations and posted a notice on the door ordering closure of the hall and banning any activity there under the pretext that the event was held under the auspices of the Palestinian Authority.
More than 250 Palestinians were killed by Israeli army gunfire and over 23,000 were injured since the start of the Great March of Return protests in the Gaza Strip on March the 30th and reaching the end of last year, according to a United Nations report published on Monday. Since March the 30th, 2018, the Gaza Strip has witnessed a significant increase in Palestinian casualties in the context of mass demonstrations and other activities along Israel's perimeter fence with Gaza taking place as part of the Great March of Return, as well as during hostilities and access-related incidents, according to a report by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the occupied Palestinian territory. More details in this report.
It was in the 1970s when Article 79 of Geneva Conventions was formally proposed as a measure of protection for journalists. Article 79 states that journalists engaged in dangerous professional missions in zones of armed conflict are civilians. It was also in the 1960s that Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights was proposed to grant freedom of expression. Despite being protected by international laws and organizations, Palestinian journalists and paramedics are under the constant threat of the Israeli occupation. Since 1972 and until the present, 83 journalists have been murdered. Ghassan Kanafani, an eminent Palestinian author and a leading member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, was the first journalist to be assassinated at the young age of 36. The most recent murder committed against Palestinian journalists on the 4th of April was against Yasser Mortaja, a journalist and a photographer from Gaza. He was killed by the Israeli occupation forces during the 2018 Gaza border protests. Mortaja is the co-founder of Ain Media Production Company, which produces videos for a number of international media outlets. He was one of the first individuals to bring a drone camera into Gaza, a territory with no airport. Lama Khater, a journalist, a writer who has written for many newspapers and websites such as Palestine. The mother of 5 children was detained in Hebron on the 24th of July 2018 by the Israeli army and taken to Ashkelon prison. According to the Palestinian Prisoners' Affairs, the number of journalists who are in Israeli jails reached 27. In addition to journalists, Israeli occupation forces also commit violation against paramedics. They directly target medical points while they are doing their duty in saving Palestinians' lives. The recent attack was against the Gazan paramedic young lady An-Najah, who was fatally hit by a live ammunition by an Israeli sniper while volunteering as a medic during the 2018 Gaza border protests. Razan is one of the 3 paramedics who were violently murdered on the Gaza borders, in addition to 103 others who were wounded while offering medical treatment to the protesters. Moreover, their cruelty never ends. A number of field hospitals in the peaceful demonstration areas were completely damaged. Dozens of medical transport were damaged too. Israeli occupation forces target journalists, paramedics, ambulances, despite the distinctive signs that shows clearly the nature of their works and duties. These violent actions are evidences that Israeli occupation forces intentionally target peaceful Palestinians, which will be added to the black record to Israeli crimes. Hanin Bakr, NBC.
Local and medical sources reported the injury of a young Palestinian early Monday during clashes with Israeli soldiers who attempted to clear an area of the city of Nablus, north of the occupied West Bank, for Jewish settlers seeking to reach a spot in the city claimed to be sacred. The Ministry of Health stated that a young man was injured in the thigh from a live bullet fired by the Israeli army and taken to hospital for treatment. He was reported in a stable condition. Army units had raided the eastern part of Nablus to secure Joseph's home for a visit by the settlers. Residents clashed, and the soldiers who fired live bullets and tear gas at the young Palestinians, causing 1 injury from a live bullet and several others from tear gas and rubber bullets, said the local sources.
The Islamic Christian Council warned on Monday that Israel's decision to close Al-Qadisiyah school in the old city of Jerusalem is a prelude to closing all schools run by the United Nations Relief and UNRWA operating in the occupied city. In a statement, the council said that the decision is not going to only harm education in the city, but is also intended to increase Jewish presence in the old city, particularly in the vicinity of Al-Aqsa Mosque, since the school is expected to be turned over to Jewish settlers. The West Jerusalem Israeli municipality said Al-Qadisiyah school will be closed at the end of the current school year, and its 385 Palestinian students will be transferred to other public schools in the city.
At least 14 Palestinians were injured, including 2 journalists and 3 paramedics, by live fire for rubber-coated bullets on Friday, as Israeli forces attacked Palestinians taking part in the weekly Great March of Return protests at Gaza-Israel border, according to the Ministry of Health. The forces fired live bullets and rubber-coated steel rounds at the protesters who gathered at many encampments along the border, injuring Ahmed Ghanem, a correspondent of Al Mayadeen TV, a journalist Mohammed Abu Quds, in addition to 3 paramedics. 10 other protesters also sustained injuries from Israeli forces' gunfire during the protests. At least 3 ambulance vehicles were directly hit by tear gas canisters at many of the encampments along the east border of the Strip.
Israeli forces on Friday detained a Palestinian child after raiding his family's home, as well as injured 2 protesters during clashes in the village of Kafr Qaddoum in the northern West Bank, local sources said. Murad Shtewi, coordinator of the popular resistance in the village, said Israeli soldiers arrested Tariq Hikmat Shtewi, 14 years old, after raiding the house of his family in the village and destroying its furniture. Israeli soldiers also fired rubber-coated rounds and tear gas canisters at protests taking part in the weekly anti-settlements protests in the village, injuring 2 protesters in the chest and foot, respectively. Almost every Friday, villagers from Kafr Qadum and nearby towns organize a non-violent protest against illegal Israeli settlements and against the Israeli authorities' closure of the village's main road, which has been sealed by the occupation authorities for 15 years.
During 2018, Israel either demolished or seized 460 Palestinian-owned structures in the West Bank, a 10% increase compared to 2017, the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the occupied Palestinian territory said in a newly published report. While in Area C, which makes over 60% of the area of the West Bank that is under full Israeli military control, the number of structures targeted in both years was approximately the same and stood at 270. Occupied East Jerusalem recorded a 25% increase compared to 2017. Of all structures targeted during 2018, 56 were donor-funded humanitarian and structures, representing a 46% decline compared to 2017 figures.
A soccer match of 2 local teams was suspended on Friday after Israeli soldiers fired tear gas canisters into Al-Khadr Stadium to the south of Beit Lahem in the occupied West Bank. Saad Hmedan, a local sports official, said that Israeli soldiers fired tear gas canisters inside the stadium during a match between the 2 soccer teams of Al-Abidiyah and Doha villages as part of a youth football league. He said some of the players sustained suffocation from the tear gas, causing the match to be suspended.
Spokesman for the Palestinian Refugee and Works Agency, Sami Mashasha, said on Sunday the agency has not received any official notice from Israeli authorities regarding reports of an Israeli plan to shut down the UNRWA-run schools in occupied East Jerusalem. The statement came after Israeli media published reports saying Israeli officials are set to revoke permits for UNRWA-run schools in East Jerusalem starting from next academic year. UNRWA's existence in Jerusalem is not a gift from Israel, Mashasha said in a press statement, adding there are bilateral agreements binding on Israel to suspect the agency installations, jurisdictions, and immunity in Jerusalem. In addition, Israel is a party to the 1946 Refugee Convention, said attempts are in violation of this convention. He said the agency had been in contact for some time with several parties regarding the renewal of the mandate of the agency, which typically begins by the end of this year.
Israeli police decided on Sunday to ban 5 employees of the Islamic Waqf, a department in charge of the Muslim places in Jerusalem, and a 6th activist from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque compound for periods ranging between 4 and 6 months. Last week, Israeli police released 4 employees of the Muslim Waqf department and banned them from being at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound for 1 week. The police detained the 4 guards as they were leaving the compound after police imposed a siege for several hours on the Dome of the Rock Mosque, which along with Al-Aqsa Mosque make the walled Al-Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary compound, because one of the guards prevented a policeman wearing the Jewish kippah from entering the Dome of the Rock Mosque. The police ended the siege after hundreds of people started gathering at the mosque demanding reopening of the mosque for worship. Israeli occupation forces last night headed the family of Hassan Barghouti, who Israel accuses of killing 2 Israeli soldiers near Ramallah in December 2018, a notice informing them of a military order to demolish their home, local sources said. Large-scale Israeli troops stormed the central West Bank village of Koba, the hometown of Barghouti, in the middle of the night before raiding Barghouti's family home. The soldiers handed Barghouti's mother the demolition order notice before taking measurements of the home in preparation for its punitive demolition. Israel has accused Hassan of shooting and killing 2 Israeli soldiers near Ramallah on December the 13th, a day after soldiers shot and killed his brother Saleh in an ambush north of Ramallah, which was described by his family as an extrajudicial execution.
Israeli military bulldozers Monday revealed Palestinian-owned farmland in Battir village, west of Bethlehem, and uprooted trees, said a local municipal source. Mayor of Battir, Taysir Kattoush, told Wafa that an Israeli military force stormed a 15-dunum plot of land and provided protection for military bulldozers as they razed the plot owned by Ra'id and Riyad Abu Harthiyah and uprooted 60 olive trees. Reports also said the military seized a mobile home for the farmers had placed on their land. Battir, 6 kilometers west of Bethlehem, is one of the UNESCO World Heritage List due to its ancient terraces and Roman-era irrigation system, which is still used by the villagers to irrigate their crops. It is a home to a Roman spring and bath, an eco museum, as well as the number of hiking trails. It is Old Town, known as the 7 Widows Quarter.
Defense for Children International in Palestine submitted a joint report to United Nations investigators last week detailing Israel forces' killing of Palestinian children during mass protests in the Gaza Strip, a conduct amounting to war crimes, said DCIP in a press release.
Israeli naval forces detained 22-year-old Palestinian fishermen while working off the coast of the northern besieged Gaza Strip Sunday evening. The head of the Palestinian Fishermen Union in Gaza, Zakaria Bakr, confirmed that Israeli authorities informed the family of the fisherman Muhammad Hussam Bakr, 22, of his detention while working off the coast in northern Gaza. The reason for Muhammad's detention remained unknown. As part of Israel's blockade, the coastal enclave since 2011, the Israeli army citing security concerns requiring Palestinian fishermen to work within limited, designated fishing zone, the exact limits of which are decided by the Israeli authorities and have historically fluctuated.
Israeli special forces and police raided Al-Aqsa Mosque compound via the Moroccan's Gate on Thursday morning. Israeli forces raided the Al-Marwani and Dome of the Rock mosques inside the compound. An Israeli policeman also attempted to enter the Dome of the Rock mosque wearing a kippah. Israeli forces then imposed closure on the compound for several hours. Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, which sits just above the Western Wall Plaza, houses both the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. While Jewish visitation is permitted to the compound, non-Muslim worship at Al-Aqsa is prohibited according to an agreement signed between Israel and the Jordanian government after Israel's illegal occupation of East Jerusalem in 1967.
129 were injured in 216 traffic accidents that occurred in the West Bank last week. The police reported in a press statement on Saturday. It stated that 2 of the injuries were serious, while 12 others were moderate and 115 were light. The police also said that out of 8,407 vehicles tested last week, permits of 103 vehicles were cancelled for lack of safety conditions, whereas 24 vehicles were destroyed for being illegal. The police said it issued 3,932 notices of traffic violation to drivers.
With Palestine assuming presidency of the Group of 77 and China in the United Nations, the United States will have no choice but to negotiate with Palestine in its capacity as the chair of the organization, Foreign Minister Riyad al-Malki said in a statement on Wednesday. In an interview with Palestine TV, al-Malki said that Palestine is not going to negotiate development issues with industrial and advanced countries on behalf of the Group of 77, including the US. Palestine is a non-member observer state in the UN since 2012, meaning that it cannot vote on any issue but join all UN organizations. Al-Malki said in New York after assuming chairmanship of the Group of 77 that Palestine is going to resubmit its application for full membership in the UN after it failed to gain it back in 2011 attempt following a US veto.
Minister of Tourism and Antiquities Rola Maaya said on Saturday that more than 3 million tourists visit Palestine in 2018. Based on data by the Central Bureau of Statistics, 3,049,753 tourists have been visited Palestine last year. Predicting that based on indicators, the number of the tourists in 2019 is going to exceed that of last year, she noted that her ministry is looking forward to creating an atmosphere that is attractive for tourism, calling for increasing investment in tourism as a vital sector in Palestine.
And now moving to An-Najah National University's news.
A delegation from the Consulate General of France in Jerusalem visits An-Najah. A delegation from the Corporation and Cultural Action Department at the Consulate General of France in Jerusalem met with Acting President of An-Najah National University, Professor Maher Al-Natshi, in Nablus at the university. The visit aimed at learning about An-Najah and discussing further means of mutual cooperation with the university. It also aimed at learning about French language teaching and learning in Palestine. Professor Natchi welcomed to the delegation and briefed them on An-Najah's programs, faculties, and scientific centers, and stressed the importance of developing further cooperation with the Consulate General of France in terms of academic exchange and joint research.
Canadian Representative Office in the Palestinian National Authorities visits An-Najah. The representative of Canada to the Palestinian National Authority, Mr. Douglas Scott Proudfoot, met with Acting President of An-Najah National University, Professor Maher Al-Natshi, in Nablus at the university. They discussed academic matters of mutual interest, especially enhancing memorandums of understanding between institutions in Canada and An-Najah, with focus on implementation rather than signing.
An-Najah among top 1,000 in world universities according to Webmetric Transparent Ranking of Repository. An-Najah National University has recently been ranked the first Palestinian university according to Webmetric Transparent Ranking of Repository, as it is among the top 1,000 in world universities. The Space Repository of An-Najah is a digital service that collects, preserves, and distributes digital materials that includes graduate thesis, graduation projects for students of all faculties, periodical, and ebooks. The repository aims to preserve An-Najah legacy as it facilitates the digital preservation and scholarly communication. It offers valuable information to the Deanship of Scientific Research, universities, facility, scientific centers, library, and other facilities.
These are the news of the week. Thank you for watching. For more details, visit our website, nn.ps.
Thank you for watching.